Up next, I would ask Aki if you would like to say a few words on behalf of your dad.
Minuisa Juri vend tervise tõttu ei saa täna olla siin, aga ta saadab minuga mõned sõnad inglise keeles. We were 4 brothers and 2 sisters. I have now said goodbye to 3 of my brothers. The departure of Juri has been most painful, since we grew up and lived most of our lives closely together. Our father had many political friends, since he was a senator and had spent some time in Russian captivity at Krestoy prison with future President Bats and General Leidener prior to Estonia's War of Independence. Our father was a lieutenant fighting in that war. I remember when either General Leidener or General Sots, who was also our father's friend, visited our father summer of 1939 as the Russian soldiers entered Estonia. It was a sunny afternoon, and the general gave rides to all the children on his motorcycle, which had a sidecar. From that moment on, Juri wanted to be an officer. He had an aunt embroider the letter O monograms on all his clothing, indicating that he was an officer. This was a foreboding of his future. Juri and I always lived together in the same room until he left for the army. We survived the misery and hunger years of wartime Germany, went to the same grade in school from 4th grade forward, even though I was a year and a half older, but was held back a year in school due to health issues. In high school, Juri was quite popular. He was president of our rifle club. Yes, we had rifle clubs in all the major cities in Connecticut in those days, and held competitions between the schools. Juri was vice president of the Honor Society and performed with great success in the student production of HMS Pinafore, where he sang solo with his great bass voice. We graduated near the top of our class with only 300th of a grade point difference. Attending UConn, he majored in chemistry, but his heart was in the Army ROTC, where he excelled as company commander. Since he graduated from ROTC on top of his class, he was offered a regular Army commission, which he gladly accepted. Juri and I stayed close throughout his Army career, and we got together frequently on his various tours of duty at different Army bases. We often met at his father-in-law's retirement camp in the Adirondacks north of Utica. This was a magical place that Eva's parents had developed high on the edge of Black River. Juri and grandfather erected an altar on the front lawn there from upright birch logs, and all 4 of Juri's and Eva's children and our 2 children were baptized there. Juri would go skiing on the frozen river at Christmas time and canoeing in the summertime. He enjoyed nature's quiet solitude. The culmination of his military career was his appointment to faculty at West Point. He had acquired his master's degree in history while attending General Staff and Command College in Kansas. Juri directed the European History Department at West Point for many years and taught true European history to the future corps of U.S. Army officers. After 22 years and some 23 moves, time came to settle down and provide a permanent home for his and Eva's 4 children, with the eldest soon to enter college. He retired from the Army, went to work for Kaman Aircraft Corporation, and acquired Kivitare. At Kaman, he quickly rose to director of manufacturing position with his unassumingly authoritative yet positive nature and Army background. He took me on a tour through the Kaman facilities one Saturday, and he was met everywhere with enthusiastic co-workers. Kivitare became his full-time job upon retirement from Kaman Aircraft. He used his masonry skills that he had acquired working in Lakewood, New Jersey during his college summers to build the garage addition here and the massive fireplace. He built another large fireplace at the grandparents' retirement house. Whenever we visited here at Kivitare, there was construction in progress. No matter how early I would get up, coming downstairs, I would always find the coffee pot steaming and the cement mixer grinding away. Juri never boasted about his career. He didn't have to. It spoke for itself. Juri donated his uniform and medals to General Leidener's home museum in Estonia, across the Viljandi Lake from our homestead. Juri left a legacy of hard work and fluent Estonian to his 4 children and 9 grandchildren. He left a legacy to all of us of friendliness, positivity, and accomplishment. Moreover, Juri left a unique legacy of a small Estonian boy who dreamt about becoming an officer to actually becoming a high-ranking United States officer teaching history at the renowned U.S. Army Military Academy at West Point. The heading under his picture in the high school yearbook so aptly predicts his life achievements. Quote, "He makes the most of the best and least of the worst." Exactly what Juri did. A life well lived.
And on that note, given the fact that Juri was as Eiki just said, a high-ranking and very well-respected military officer, I think it's fitting that we have military honors for him at this time.
On behalf of the grateful nation, thank you for your loved ones, thank you for one out of service for our country. God bless your family. Thank you. showcasing your represents the shots fired and honor of your level of service to our country.
Thank you very much.
We'll continue with Yuri's son, Karu, telling us about his dad.
I'd like to share a memory of my father that's been with me for many years. We had been working in the yard, and at the end of a long day, we had settled onto the back terrace. I still remember my father leaning back in his chair as he surveyed the yard. He gave his typical bounce of his legs and sighed a contented sigh. The yard was beautiful that day, and there was the satisfaction of a job well done. But it was more than that. My father seemed at peace with the world as he looked out at Kividare, which is what we call our home here. In Estonian, it basically means stone house, steep roof. And I remember thinking as a young man, eager to get out into the world, that the calmness was so profound that one day I would love to experience that contentment that my father was feeling. And as I look back, it is understandable that my father was at peace at the home he had built. Here was a man who had truly lost almost everything as a child. He lost his father, he lost his brothers, he lost his home, he lost his country. He traveled to a new land with nothing, and then soon after he lost his mother. He was a Yukon graduate, so perhaps it's a small world after all, that we're here after all those years. And as a top ROTC graduate, was offered an officer commission in the U.S. Army. He married my mother and began the trials and travels that claim every military life. In Estonian, your spouse is referred to as your abikaasa, which directly translated means you're helped with, because your spouse is who helps you with everything, who journeys with you through life. And my mother did truly help my father navigate this life over 54 years of marriage. My parents had 4 children, Dorm, Heli, myself, and Kialis. So needless to say, we blended in right into wherever Army base we were stationed at, with our Estonian home life, our detailed explanations why Estonia was not part of the USSR, or even our ever so slightly off-kilter names. Yet looking back, it is with a sense of pride that my parents were able to pass along our heritage and preserve such a fundamental part of who we are in the face of the modern world. I think they did so in part because they could always be teaching us secretly while out in Estonian. Stand up straight, look people in the eye, clean up your mess. And my father, who found his true calling as the head of the European History Department at West Point, was always teaching. There were also times when I was too young to stand up for myself, and my father was there. When I was 6 or so and I was playing in the creek behind our house at West Point, 3 women came up on a sidewalk and informed me that they owned the creek and I was no longer allowed to play there. Now in hindsight, I realize the folly of that statement. But to 6-year-old me, this was crushing. The creek was the true joy of my day, and I would have gladly skipped school. Just play out there all day, even in winter. In fact, I was often out there in winter, fingers blue with cold. I ran home crying, and as luck would have it, my father was home that afternoon in his full military uniform. And he marched me back to the creek to let those ladies know that the creek was military property. And they had no ownership of it. And I was allowed to play. The ladies weren't there, but my father sent me back to play. And I knew that my father always had my back. I'm sorry. mother and father always seemed to give us enough leeway to learn on our own, but they guided us along an enriching path. They were into experiences long before they were popular, and on a shoestring budget, we truly saw the world. Financial planning was not their strong suit. Take this house and this land. It was run down, it was overgrown, a true jungle that any sensible person would have passed on. Though it did have this grove that my father loved. But with hard work, sweat, and a lot of child labor, they were able to transform it into their forever home. My father built a garage, built a fireplace, replaced windows. I cannot tell you how many times he has fallen off that roof. He planted trees and rocks all over, like this monolith or menhir that we levitated here soon after buying the house and joining civilian life. We had helps from so many people over the years. Hendrik Siesmetz lent us the come along to winch up the monolith, and I recall my father broke it. My father's cousin Ngoiva helped him lay the garage's foundation, and I think my aunt Kiku accidentally smashed his truck bumper into a fence post. There's a